Do you accept it, Matthieu? Great. Great. All right, welcome everyone to the workshop on real-world legged locomotion. I'm excited today to introduce Matthieu, who's going to be talking about Wandercraft and their exoskeleton they've developed over the years, multiple versions of it. Matthieu has led Wandercraft since 2013 and is the CEO as of 2018, but has led huge scientific teams or the scientific aspects and the technical aspects of Wandercraft for a long time, including raising money, but also guiding the vision of Wandercraft as a whole. I personally have had the pleasure of seeing Wandercraft many times over many years now, and they did something very unique in that all of the other exoskeletons that existed on the market required crutches, used heuristics, but Wandercraft decided to do something that was, in my mind, incredibly courageous, which was to say, we want to have dynamic walking on an exoskeleton. And so the only way we're going to do that is by embracing the technologies that yield dynamic walking. So this, in my mind, is a wonderful success story of taking all of the methods that have been developed that this workshop's talking about, that all the papers in the area talk about, and translating it to a application where it can really help people. So really at the core of this device is dynamic walking and real-world legged locomotion realized in a way that can help people walk better. So I don't want to talk much further, but this is what makes this very exciting for me. It's a pleasure to work and collaborate with Matthieu. It's a pleasure to have one of their devices in my lab that we get to play with all the time. So with that, I'll let Matthieu talk about the device itself, Wandercraft in general. So please take it away.
Thank you very much, Aaron. Has anyone in the poll ever walked into his lab or his test room with this new idea that he was very, very enthusiastic about, working perfectly in simulation, and then launch the experiment and watch his robot miserably fall? And then you realize that someone just before you has changed just a little bit the controller or the software, or has added some kind of component that changes the behavior of the robot, and then nothing works anymore, and it's complete chaos. Have you? When I met Nicolas 8 years ago, and he pitched me his crazy idea, I had absolutely no idea that this was going to be the biggest challenge I had ever faced. His idea was completely crazy, but also absolutely amazing. What if we could help the people that need it most get up, stand up, walk again, and wander freely, not only in their homes, but all around the city? What if we could use and leverage the amazing potential of dynamic robotics and dynamic walk to give them back the autonomy and the freedom they need? So right now, maybe you're wondering what are the things that connect these two stories. Well, Nicolas' idea was to create an exoskeleton that was going to help people walk again. But if you think about it, one exoskeleton for one person is only useless. If you are going to really change the life of these millions of people, you have to have an exoskeleton that works for all of them. So what does that mean? Well, it means that you have to handle a very, very large variety of pilots, because, and I think that's a blessing, people differ a lot in height, in weight, and people that need some help walking again differ a lot in impairment. So you actually have not one model of an exoskeleton and a patient that you have to make work, but you have almost infinite variety of models. Some people are 1 meter and 50, and some are 1 meter and 90. Some meter weigh 100 pounds, and some people weigh 200 pounds. And that has a lot of influence on how a person in an exoskeleton is going to behave. So because our idea was to have the biggest impact, from the beginning, we thought that we had to accommodate for all these different kinds of patients. So the first thing we thought about when we started designing Atalante, our exoskeleton, was how can we address at least 90% of the patients out there? So we looked at height, weight, spasticity, which is something that affects people that cannot walk anymore, where their limbs are going to move by themselves, and the type of pathology that makes walking very difficult. And as with every parameter, you have this Gaussian distribution, where 90% of the person are going to be in a pretty narrow band. So we decided to have the exoskeleton work for all these patients. And then we had to think about how it was going to work. So the idea is that we have to have patient information because we want to do something that really fits a given and a specific patient. We designed a framework where we have this mobile app where you can input the information of the patient, and then the mobile app sends this information to our server, where we have algorithms that run and generate trajectory and other kind of inputs that are required then on the exo to execute the motion. Our first exoskeleton, Atalante, is designed for use in rehabilitation centers and medical settings. So it is to be used by physiotherapists or doctors to walk again during re-education sessions and work sessions. Now imagine you are a physiotherapist. Your schedule of the day is probably 6, 7, or 8 patients. So you have to work fast, right? You've got this patient that you really want to get up again because he's been in his wheelchair for 3 or 4 weeks since his accident. So you think, nice, I have my exoskeleton. I'm going to make him walk. So let's take the mobile app and put the patient information in it and send it to Wandercraft, and that's going to be tremendous. Now, how long can you wait for the inputs to come? You cannot wait 1 day, right? Because you've got these 6 or 7 other patients that you have to take care of after in the day. So you cannot even wait for an hour, and you cannot wait for 20 minutes. It has to be less than 5 minutes. So one of the things we really worked hard at Wandercraft was designing algorithms that would be able to output trajectories and everything that's required for the care session and for the exoskeleton to work very fast and eat this framework. So how did we do that? Well, as Aaron said, we looked a lot at all the papers out there and what were the state-of-the-art methods and what was working and what was not yet working but was very promising. And finally, we came up with this strategy where, first of all, we formulate the walk, but actually even the motion problem as an optimal control problem. So the goal is really to find the optimal trajectory under constraint. So for that, we take the full dynamical model of both the patient and the exoskeleton merged together. So that's something very important. I know a lot of theories rely on reduced model. At Wandercraft, from the get-go, we decided that working with the full model made actually more sense because we had this information about the patient and we wanted to leverage that, to use that to provide better performance, more stability, and more anthropomorphic gait. So we merged the model of the patient and of the exo together to make a single model. This is taken into account via mass, inertia, and everything in a multi-body model. And we also add all the physical constraints. So obviously, torque, everything that is related to the exoskeleton capabilities, but also everything that is related to the patient's range of motion. We don't want to go beyond what the patient is capable of, so it has to be an input as well. Then we add the walk parameters or the motion parameters. So that's where there is quite a lot of know-how that we've developed over the years, mostly working with the physiotherapists themselves and the doctors to understand what's a good gait, what makes it really anthropomorphic, what is going to be comfortable for the patient, what is not going to be comfortable for the patient. So we had a lot of constraints that make the problem more likely to output a good solution, something that's going to work on the exo, something that's going to be good for the patient. And then a lot of things happen. So we use a direct collocation method because we found it was very powerful, especially compared to single shooting methods that we were using in the beginning of Wandercraft. But at that time, it took 3 days approximately to output one trajectory. So that was something we were very proud at the time because that were the first trajectories we were able to do. But as I explained previously, it's not something that you can accept when you're a physiotherapist and you've got your device and you want your patient to work right. So we use this direct collocation method to discretize the problem, and it makes a problem in very high dimensions, right? Because you've got all these variables: position, velocities, acceleration, forces, and so the dimension of the problems we then solve is something like 15,000, but obviously with a very sparse structure usually. So this allows us to feed the problem to a numerical solver that is very efficient with, especially with sparse problems. And we came up with solutions that are able to be outputted in less than a minute. So obviously there is a lot of know-how and tuning in that regard, because that's not very easy. But we've got a whole team here at Wandercraft that's working on it. And then it's converted in a trajectory format that's readable by the exoskeleton. We've got tools for analysis and visualization, and making sure that we are not doing, we are not sending things that are going to be unreadable by the exoskeleton. So this whole framework is working very well. And I know I already said it, but let me insist once again, it has to work for every patient that's susceptible to come in the exoskeleton. So anyone from 155 to 190 and from 50 kilograms to 90 kilograms, his problem has to converge. So a lot of the work we do is actually making sure that all our algorithms converge for the whole database we have at Wandercraft. And every now and then, I've got one person from the team who is going to come to me and say, Matthieu, we've got this huge problem. Our database only has a 99.5% convergence rate. So it means that maybe one patient is going to come and we are not going to be able to find a trajectory for him. And then we discuss together what constraint can we change. So we're going to go from 99.5 to 100%. And so it goes. So that's really the core of what we do at Wandercraft. And I guess your question then is, then what trajectories do you output? So we have put a lot of different motions because we want our patients to do a lot of things. The first thing we do is what we call small steps. So it's basically the basic walk that's going to be used by a patient just to get used to the exoskeleton with something that's very smooth, very comfortable, and not too overwhelming as a first try. So here you can see Kevin, which is one of the pilots of Wandercraft. He's completely paraplegic, so he cannot move at all by himself. And as you can see, he can walk without any assistance in the exoskeleton. As you can also see, we've got this rail above him in case of anything that could happen. Everybody knows that stuff happens to robots, so better be safe than sorry. But this gate is pretty efficient to get used to the exo. It's not extremely anthropomorphic, which is why we developed another gate that we call Footholding, and you'll quickly understand why. So this gate is much more anthropomorphic because you've got this heel strike and this toe lift that closely mimic what a human gait actually looks like. So we've worked a lot on it, and it actually revolves around the formulation of the problem I was talking before, designing the right domains. Obviously, it's a multi-domain problem, and having the right constraints at each phase. But the result is a walk that's much faster, that has longer steps, and it's really much more anthropomorphic. So physio really like it when they see their patients walk like that. But obviously, it's much more dynamic as well. So At the moment, it's still necessary to be supervised by a physio, and we're working on stability to make sure that in the future that's not mandatory. And it's also not something you want to start your rehab session with, because it's, if you've never walked before, it can be a bit overwhelming. And then we also have what we call turnaround motion, because we want the exoskeleton to be really dynamic, and we want the patient to be able to evolve in his own environment. So we want it to not only stay in the rehab room, but wander in the whole center if he feels like doing it. So you've got to be able to maneuver and to reposition yourself, and that's something we can do through this motion. And that's something that, to my knowledge, no other exoskeleton is able to do. So all this is obviously interesting, and if you're thinking about it, it's the standard framework of robotics. You take a model, right? You feed that to dynamic equations, and you have some kind of offline optimization. This optimization outputs trajectory that you have a certain set of properties on, and then you send these trajectories on the exoskeleton or on your robot. You have some kind of tracking, whatever that may be, and then you have the robots perform the motion. And in the end, you have human beings able to walk without any assistance. So in itself, it's already pretty amazing. But there are limitations to it, and we quickly became aware of that. First, the trajectories that you have outputted only have this specific set of properties. So they have like an average gait speed, step length, or direction. But what if your patient doesn't want to walk at 0.5 meters per second, but he really needs to walk at 0.56 or 55? You could rerun the trajectory planning, but it takes a minute. So if you have to react during the motion, you cannot rely on even these super fast algorithms. So we thought, what if you wanted to have new trajectories, not at 1 minute, but in 1 millisecond, to be able to react to anything that's going to happen to you. So that was a direction we explored for some time. And we actually were able to do that by introducing some learning on top of what we do. So the idea was, because we can generate a lot of trajectories very fast, which is would give you a lot of possibilities, we can generate a very big database of trajectories for any kind of motion. And from this database, we can synthesize a neural network that itself is going to be able to output any kind of trajectories very fast. So we submitted a paper that was accepted at ICRA this year, which is called the Online Trajectory Planning through Combined Trajectory Optimization by Duburk et al. So Alexi is one of the person working at Wandercraft, and he wrote a really brilliant paper. He was awarded the best award. He was finalist for the best award paper at this year. So it's really an amazing paper, and I encourage everybody to read it because it's really good. And the result is that we are able to output trajectories in a time frame of the order of the millisecond. So that's very promising. Right now, we are not using this at its full capacity. We are already using it for some features on the exoskeleton, but we think there is a lot of potential with this idea, because it's really the way you are going to be able to adapt to any kind of situation. If you encounter a door and you have to make a shorter step, or if you want to take a turn very fast, or any given situation that requires that you adapt from your regular gait to a new set of constraints from the environment, we think that's the way to go. We talked a lot about height and weight, and that's the first thing that comes to mind. When you think about a person and how it can differ, obviously these are the two parameters you think about. One other parameter that is actually very important is the impairment of the person. some people that are going to use the exoskeleton have absolutely no residual strength. So that was the case of Kevin that you saw in the first video. But some of them actually have some strength. And even more than that, they can regain more strength. So how can you help them in their education? You have to engage them so that they provide some part of the effort during the motion. So we also worked in a direction where we reduce the assistance that the exoskeleton is going to provide during the motion. So that took a bit of intellectual thinking, because obviously you cannot just get the gains down and hope that it's going to work well. You have to think of intelligent way to have the patient inside the exoskeleton provide this support. And we finally came up with a formulation where we can have the exoskeleton assist at what we call 100% of the work. So that's what you're going to see in the first video. This is Stanislas, so he's one of the engineers here at Wandercraft. So he doesn't need the exoskeleton to work, but he can provide the effort if needed. Here, he's doing absolutely nothing, and the exoskeleton is going to work all by himself. So pretty interesting, but not that useful for him. But you can also get this percentage of assistance down, and then you are going to see that the less Stanislas is doing effort, the less the exoskeleton works very well. And actually, if he stops doing any effort, as you can see here, the exoskeleton is going to stop completely. So that's very interesting for the physiotherapist, because then they can adjust the percentage of effort that the exoskeleton is providing in relation with the status of his patient. Is my patient very healthy and almost fit to be discharged? Then I'm going to get the percentage down to almost 0%. If he's just out of his acute phase and I really need him to be relaxed and very assisted, then I'm going to be at 90 or 95%. And you can do everything in between, depending on the session, his state of the day, and a whole lot of other parameters that physiotherapists would tell you much better than I can actually. Okay, so that's for patients, right? But Wandercraft vision is not to provide an exoskeleton just for rehab centers. Our idea from the beginning, and that's what Nicolas told me when I joined him, was that we could really use the technology to get people out there in the city, in the real world. So how do we prepare for the real world? We were actually lucky enough to find a contest which is called Cibathlon, which really put a lot of thought into designing challenges that are representative of what patients encounter in everyday life. So they designed a whole set of contests and challenges that represent what you need to overcome in order to really get to an inclusive solution. So this was so closely aligned with what we were thinking about that we really jumped on the occasion and said, okay, let's prepare for the Cibathlon, not in order to win, but actually in order to improve ourselves and our product. So this kind of put the whole team in effervescence, because we started working on it pretty late in the race. Cibathlon is actually something that happens every 4 years, and we entered the contest, I think, less than 8 or 9 months before it started. So everybody had to be very quick and think fast. But with the help of the framework we designed, we were able to start doing a lot of the tasks pretty quickly. That's how powerful the framework is. It means that you have a new motion to perform, like let's say stairs, or walking through a door, or walking up a cliff. It's pretty quick to have motions going. So rather quickly, we're able to design motions to get upstairs. And the first motion you're going to see is Yorick, which is the second pilot at Wandercraft. He's also completely paraplegic. And with the single help of Atalante and his arms, he's using the lift, he can get upstairs. So that was something that we are very happy about, because when we started and designed Atalante, Stairs were not even in the specs of the product. That was for the next product that was supposed to go in real life. But actually, we are able to get people upstairs and pretty repeatably. So that's very exciting. The other thing we are able to do was a lot of maneuvering that is required to really evolve in real life. So here you can see Guillaume, one of the engineers from the team, trying to go through a door. So when you think about it, it doesn't look like much. But if you really want to walk through a door, you have to be able to do all these kind of maneuvering motions, like turning around and slightly adjusting your position. And here you can see him getting backward actually to the door. And we were able to implement all these motions on the exoskeleton. And again, that was something like 3 or 4 months of work. One of the other contests that Sebastian designed was being able to get up from a very soft standing point. So we've got this sofa, which is very low on the ground. So it requires quite some trick of the mind to think how are you going to get up. And we were able to do it by really leveraging the dynamic aspect of the motion. As you can see, we really use the motion of the torso of Kevin to provide some momentum for the exoskeleton to get up. So that's something that we've put a lot of emphasis on, is getting the best out of the dynamic of motions rather than having this static way of thinking where you are going to force and use a lot of torque to try to control it. Rather, go with the momentum and use the momentum because it's going to help you in the end. Obviously, you also need, if you are going to evolve in a real life setting, you need to be able to handle perturbations. So one of the benchmarks we use here at Wandercraft to test the robustness and the stability of our algorithms is this exact setup that you are seeing right now. We put a dummy, I think it's from the automotive industry, and they use it for crash tests. We put a dummy in the exoskeleton because we know the dummy is not going to perturb or do anything that we are not going to be able to control. Experiences with the dummy are not perfectly repeatable, but we know that the dummy is not helping at all. So that's kind of our benchmark. And our target here on this experiment was to reach 1,000 steps, because we thought that if we could reach this level, probably it was able to work indefinitely. And as you can see, with these last algorithms that we've been trying on the exo, and they are pretty recent, it's the work of really the last 2 months, we're able to have a gate which is extremely stable. We're able to push the dummy and to do all kinds of perturbations in all directions without getting him to fall. There are still some stuff that we need to handle, which are related to direction. The dummy is not able to correct for direction itself, so we have somebody doing it in his sense. But really, we have this very high stability that we're very happy about, and that really make us think that it's going to be a thing, exoskeletons in the city. It's not something that we cannot achieve, the kind of stability that's required to evolve in the streets and everywhere around. It's something that we can do. So that's what I wanted to end the talk with. It's that we really had this vision from the get-go that we were going to use dynamic robotics and to give back mobility to everybody that needs it. And one of the biggest challenge we faced was really this need to adapt to every different patient. That's something that's very, very difficult. And that's why I wanted to start with this question, because I think everybody can relate to this setting where nothing works because something has changed before you. And that's actually the case. If you work at Wandercraft, you have to think that each time a new patient gets in the exo, everything you fine-tune for another patient is not going to work. So you have to have this mindset where your work has to be robust to any perturbations coming from the model. and that's the model of the patient, right? But in some sense, it also translates to perturbation to the model of the environment. And that's why I think this challenge was obviously very difficult, but was also an opportunity and a way to force us to confront the whole complexity of the world and to design algorithms that then would be robust to perturbation from the outside and who would finally and eventually work in the real life. So that's it for me, I guess, and I'm happy to answer any questions from the audience or from you, Aaron, as you see fit.
Thank you, Matthieu. Wonderful talk. Thank you. So for the audience, what we'd like to do is, if you have questions, please put them in the chat window, and I'll read them to you, Matthieu. So we have a couple of questions to kick things off. The first one is, and I think I'll try to get this right, but so if personalization of gait is the goal, and you talked a lot about doing optimization and generating dynamic motions for the gait. How do you plan on handling personal comfort issues related to the gaits that you're generating? So each person has a different comfortable trajectory. Or what are the plans to factor that into the picture?
So actually, I think you would be the best person to answer this question. I think a lot of the person in the audience have read the paper that Megan and yourself have submitted to ICRA. Actually, we know that there are methods where you can learn gait preference based on what the person is doing inside the exo. So we don't see it as a problem to have a specific, generic set of constraints, because then it's still going to output a motion that's specific to the person, but maybe he or she would have preferred other things. But then you can have mechanisms on the exoskeleton which are going to learn the preference of the specific person in the exoskeleton and adapt slightly after he has worked on the ego. But one thing we could even do, and that's also something the team has been working on, is actually design some meta learning algorithms where you are going to learn what the learning algorithms would actually come up with. So then we wouldn't even need this phase of learning the preference of the person, but we could from the get-go, based on the person itself, know where his or her preference would lie in the end. So I really think it's all about having this some initial gait and then adapting to the person. But you have to have the initial gait or the initial motion.
I completely agree. Having thought of this problem, as you said, I think and the thing is, once you have this basis of trajectories, as a basis of surface of dynamic walking gaits, you can pick in that surface, right? So you're not just generating, when you have the ability to rapidly generate walking gaits that are dynamic, you're not just generating one, but you can generate thousands, and you can parameterize them and then decide within those what the best one is. So you really are giving the patient, ultimately you're giving the patient the ability to pick between a bunch of different gaits. And you can do things like preference-based learning like we did, and a variety of other methods to try to decide which of those gaits they actually like the best. Right? Yeah, exactly. I completely agree. All right, let's get to we have other questions. So let's, so it was asked, could exoskeletons be affordable in the near future? So the question of cost. Yeah.
So I guess it all depends on what you call the near future, right? At Wandercraft, we strongly, and I really mean the word strongly, believe that the cost could be less than that of a car. And we know billions of cars are on the planet, and that's something we are trying to get rid of because it's not so healthy for the planet. But in the case of exoskeletons, we actually think it could be extremely healthy to have millions of them because it would also mean millions of people able to get back to work in some cases, able to just get out of their homes and get down to the bakery, and if they're French and they love their baguette, bring it back home. So really, we really think the social impact of having millions of exoskeletons would be extremely positive and extremely high. and having millions of exoskeletons will no doubt get the cost down to something that's very affordable. And when I say a car, actually our benchmark at Wandercraft is actually more that of a motorcycle, because it closely resembles in terms of complexity, number of parts, and total volume. That's something we really have in mind. So for the moment, obviously the cost is very high. I'm not here to give you a price, but obviously tens or hundreds of thousands of euros to build an exoskeleton. Our target is to make it very, very lower, very much lower than that. And so it means in the very low tens of thousands of euros or dollars.
Very good. Next question is, would it be advantageous to build a lookup table of gates instead of optimizing on demand? So the question is sort of, why not just generate all possible gates for all possible people and all possible parameters in this huge database and just pull from that rather than optimizing on demand?
Well, I guess in a way, it's not possible because it's the curse of dimensionality. So you have to make choices. And in another sense, it's actually exactly what we've done, right, with this neural network. So I think it's not possible to generate any single gate. And actually, you've got some issues with embarking the whole database on a single exoskeleton and a whole other set of things. But I think it's possible to generate just enough gates so that you can reconstruct anything you would be likely to want in the future. So the whole let's say the whole trick or the whole complexity or the difficulty is really understanding what kind of gate you need to generate to be in your database, and what other you can afford not to have generated because it's going to take a lot of computing power and time and resources. So you can have in the end what you want. So
yeah, very good. So the next question is, the people that you showed in the videos were mostly fit. Have you done clinical trials or testing with people that are less fit, meaning less out of shape, overweight, etc.?
Okay, so that's a good question, and it actually is exactly in what I was talking about handling a very large variety of patients, right? We want to handle the largest part of the population that might be likely to want our exoskeleton. So we've done some clinical trials. We're actually running our third clinical trial approved by the health authorities. During the first two, we had a different kind of person, so different kind of ages, different kind of morphologies, and different kind of fitness. Obviously, so it wasn't the case in the videos, but we had people go all the range that I showed previously. So we had people at 90 kilograms. We didn't have anyone above that weight because that's the specifications of the exo. But we had people up to that weight, and it worked, I would say, not differently from here. Another thing that comes to mind is not only weight, but also impairment. As I said, that's something very important when you're talking about patients, because patients just after their accident, let's say if they have a stroke or something like that, are much weaker than after some time. And we've been able to have in the exo patients that were still severely impaired by their incident. And that's actually one of the points that we really emphasize when we talk to doctors. And at the beginning, they don't really believe us. Let me tell you a story about that because I think it's funny. We recently hired an MD in the team. She's called Rebecca. She's amazing, very young, but also very talented. And she's been practicing medicine in a rehab center. Rehab center we know. So she joined the team, I would say 3 months ago, during the lockdown. So not ideal, but we had to make it work, right? And a couple of days ago, we sent her to one of the rehab centers we work with, one of the rehab centers that has acquired an exoskeleton, one version of Catalan. And she discussed with the medical staff there, and the medical staff wanted to try the exoskeleton with not a paraplegic patient, but a tetraplegic patient. So really paralyzed up to the neck. And so I knew Rebecca was gone for the day, and when she came back, she looked very happy. So I asked her what had happened, and she actually told me that she was so happy because she had seen these tetraplegic patients walk in the exoskeleton, and I really liked the smile on her face. But I didn't really understand because that's not something that looked so surprising to me. And so I thought, so why are you smiling like that? And she said, I didn't believe that he was going to walk in the exoskeleton. So she's from the team, and she even didn't believe that it was going to work. And actually, it worked very well, and the whole team, the medical team, was very happy, and she was happy. But just to emphasize the fact that with Atalante, you can get patients that are really early in their education or not long after their impairment or accident, and you can do things with them. You can get them up, you can walk, you can perform exercises. Physiotherapists love to have not only walking sessions, but walking and doing other things, what they call double tasking. So sorry for being that long. It was a broad question, so I wanted to give the full perspective. But yeah, we've been doing clinical trials and having a large variety of patients use the exo.
So let me ask kind of another question that's in the chat window, but it's sort of a follow-up is, do you think the number of joints you have on the device, active joints, motors, are sufficient? Could be reduced? I mean, are they sufficient for, the question was, are they sufficient for completely disabled people? I think you were just talking about this in the story. And could they be reduced in certain scenarios? Could you imagine variants with more or less motors, actuators, depending on the specific condition, medical condition?
That's a good question. Actually, we've been testing architectures with less degrees of freedom. So last year we had a prototype with not 12 but 8 degrees of freedom, and maybe we're just not strong enough. So the answer is maybe, but I'm not good enough for that, and I don't think the team is good enough to be able to give the same level of performance with less degrees of freedom. So right now, my feeling is that we are even maybe lacking 1 degree of freedom, or 1 or 2 degrees of freedom, because one essential part of walking is the toe push at the end of the of when the foot is lifting off, and we cannot do that because we don't have the degrees of freedom in the toe. So my feeling is that all of them are necessary, and actually even a bit more necessary to provide real walk and real resistance to perturbation. But maybe I'm just not good enough. I don't know. The other point is, do you know how many muscles there are in the human body?
How many what?
How many muscles do you have?
Oh, muscles in the body? Yeah, I have no idea.
It's in the hundreds.
Yeah.
So maybe some people are good enough to make it work with less. I don't think I am.
I think the thing is that you might be able to reduce the number of actuators for a given motion. For example, for walking, you might be able to have less, even dynamic walking, even for paraplegics. But that's for walking in a straight line, right? With no perturbations. I think anytime you're talking about having a certain level of functionality in a variety of different environments, as you said, we have a lot of muscles and we don't really need all those muscles all the time. But if we're going to do everything we want to do throughout our lives, we end up using most of those muscles, right? In some way, shape, or form. And so, yeah, I think that the question is a very complicated one because it depends on what are you trying to achieve, in what environments are you trying to achieve it, and you know, what the proper architecture is to achieve those goals. But yeah.
And another aspect of that is when you talk to physiotherapists and doctors, usually they really think, obviously they think about their patients, right? That's their everyday life. And they want the whatever the device is to engage most of the muscles of the patient. So they don't want some muscles to be just left like that and never touched or never used. They want to be able to activate all the parts and all the muscles of the patient. So in this sense, I think it's not a goal per se to reduce the number of actuators. I don't think like that. I don't see why it should be a target to have a low number of actuators, except that it's going to bring the cost down and maybe the overall volume of the device. But you have other strategies to do that, right? So because I don't see it as a goal, I rather see having the best device as the goal. I don't really try and push the idea of reducing the number of degrees of freedom.
Yeah. I actually think that's right, because I think you end up converging on the numbers you have, actually. Yeah, no, this is good. Good summary of these different issues. So slightly different bend on just number of actuators and patients, but going to the assistance needed capabilities. The question is, to what type of signals are you looking at when you're interfacing with somebody and giving them some authority to walk? Meaning you're doing some assistance, but taking away the exo assistance and letting them do some of the effort themselves. What signals are you looking at? What sensing do you need?
Okay.
What's the interface look like? I guess this is the question they're asking.
So what do we base the assistance on, right? Well, a number of things, but obviously seeing the perturbations the patient puts in the motion, in the overall motion, is a big part of it. Because if we know the motion is supposed to look in a certain shape, and we see it doesn't behave like that, we know that the patient has to have done something, right? It's probably because he's done some kind of effort in some kind of direction, and using that, we can see if this effort is in the right direction or not. So the whole idea revolves around the fact that we try to see in which direction the patient is doing the effort, and also in which direction we hope he's going to do the effort, because we want him to follow a certain trajectory. And based on that, we are going to help him a lot if he has a lot of assistance, and almost none if there is no assistance. To do that, and for it to be efficient, you have to have the most transparent mechanism, because he cannot be pushing against the inertia of the exo or against gravity. So you have to have compensating mechanisms on the exoskeleton that are going to enable the patient to do these efforts and to have these efforts sensed in a way. So I hope it addresses the question. If not, please tell me and I can try some more.
Yeah. No, I think that was good without going through the entire process. In fact, there's a related question, so maybe I'll jump to that. The question was, it's a little bit about the hardware side. So first, how do you sense patients trying to move within the device itself? What's the interface right now with the patient? And also, what's the battery life like on the exo? How long can it run without needing to be charged? So some hardware questions.
Okay. So we've got, obviously we have some information on what happens at each actuator level. because we know how much current is drawn and used. So that gives us a whole lot of information. And we also have sensing capabilities in the foot of the exoskeleton. So we know when there is a contact, where and with how much weight or pressure on it. So this helps us navigate the support frames at any given time, which is obviously very helpful to perform dynamic computations and understand what's the context of walking. And we also have some inertial measurements. So we are able to reconstruct rather precisely the overall position of the system and how it's behaving. So that relates to the sensing capabilities, I guess. The other question was regarding battery life. So my answer, if I were to talk to physios, would be enough so you can perform all your sessions with your patients. The engineer answer, I guess, is between 1.5 and 2 hours of hard or really intense motions and exercising. So you can walk no problem for at least an hour and a half.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then the batteries are very easy to change and plug and play. So in the end, it's not that much of an issue in a rehab center version. Obviously, the personal version will need to be a bit more, but
yeah. But from the engineering side, it's very easy having owning one of these. I know, I mean, because the batteries are on the front of the thighs, basically, of the exo. So you can pop them off, charge them, pop them back on, which is actually kind of brilliant. Most of a lot of robots, you have to take them apart to get the batteries out, and that kind of doesn't make sense, right? So, all right, so I'm going to close up with, we have about 4 minutes left, so 3 more questions, because I think these are all good questions. And so the first question is, do you imagine more elaborate ways of interfacing with the human down the line? That is, you could do muscle stimulation in conjunction with the exoskeleton and then try to use some of their own muscles, right? Do you imagine neuro or bio interfaces between the device and the people and the person, the patient going forward?
Actually, that's a very good question. And I don't have the complete answer to that, except that there is no method that is going to work for every single patient. I was talking earlier about a tetraplegic patient that has used the exoskeleton. One of the ways you trigger the motions when you're in Atalante is by moving your torso. So obviously, in the case of this tetraplegic patient, he couldn't do that. So the medical team had to do something very astute. They move the trigger somewhere around the head, and so he can use it and trigger the motion. Just to emphasize that if you're talking about muscle sensing or electrostimulation, it's not going to work on paraplegic patients because the signal just doesn't get through at one point. So it's not going to work for, maybe it's very efficient for some kind of patients, but it's not going to be efficient for some other. And that works as well for the solution we've chosen, inertial strategy command. So I think at some point we're going to have to customize a little bit the exoskeleton so that we have one solution for one kind of patients or one type of pathology, and another that works well with another. But that's actually something that makes the device much more complex. So we've got very, very intense discussions right now in the engineering team regarding how and what we should do for different pathologies. Because right now we only have complete paraplegic patients that have been, let's say, validated by regulatory agencies. But quite soon we are going to have also stroke patients and incomplete paraplegic patients, and I hope a lot more in the coming years. So that's something we are going to have to address. I don't think there is a single solution that works for everybody. That's my answer.
Yeah, I think that is true too. So next question about future capabilities. What about more dynamic behaviors than you even have? So running or jumping, or what do you see possible?
Actually, I had this very discussion with someone of the team, I think this week. I think it's feasible to jump right now with that alone. The tough part is rather landing, right? So obviously we want to increase the dynamic capabilities of the exo, and we are working right now on a new prototype that's going to be way more dynamic. We're really working hard on that, so it's going to be way more reversible in the actuations and have higher capabilities. The trick is being dynamic enough to handle every situation, but not too dynamic that you are going to scare patients. That's something we've seen before. Patients are not accustomed, if they've been in the wheelchair for 3 or 4 months, already getting and standing up is somehow, for some of them, a bit exhilarating. So we have to be careful and really get them in a setting where they're comfortable. So I don't think jumping is the first thing we would go to. Already mastering steps and thresholds and being able to go in the streets would be very important. And one more thing would be to being able to get in a car. Actually, I think that would be very, very useful for our users.
Yeah, very good. All right, so the final question, which is the one I think it's good to close on, is what's the availability of the device? Is it available to non-medical professionals? Is it generally available public, to researchers, etc.? What's the availability?
Okay, so obviously it's available for any medical institutions. Our goal and the whole team is working so that we can help the maximum number of patients. So any medical institutions in the world, we're happy to see if we can work with them. There are always regulatory aspects involved, so we have to clear that. But we are willing to provide access to Atalante to the biggest number of patients. For non-medical institutions, that's also something we can work on. As you mentioned, you have an Atalante at your own lab. So if we think the robotic team is interested enough, that's something we can discuss. Obviously, that's not our main business model, so it's kind of we have to see how and if it can work. Yeah. But Atalante is very easy to use. You've got the last version we have works with a tablet that's really easy to use. So there are not many problems.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. Well, with that, we'll end our special session. Thank you for giving a fantastic talk and for answering a bunch of interesting questions on the next steps for exoskeletons. So Matthieu, thank you so much for being here virtually. Thank you everyone that attended. And with that, we'll go on to study more exoskeletons. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aaron. Have a good day. And thank you everyone for attending the session.
Thank you, Aaron. Just a quick note. So we are not sure about tomorrow's talk. It might be postponed. So please stay with us and check on our website where tomorrow's talk is going to take place. So thank you very much once more.
All right.